everybody. Hello, happy Thursday. Welcome to this event, broadcast very excitingly from my office, which is very exciting. Welcome to this talk today, which is part of the Data Science Festival Women in Data Month, which is a very exciting event, the first of its kind, and really all about getting participation from the wonderful women we have in the data community around the UK, around the world, I believe, now that we've gone online. So it's very exciting. And I am here today as your host. So my job is brief and quite easy. I personally am a long-time supporter of the Data Science Festival, so I wanted to give a big shout out to all the organisers for making today happen for us and for creating such a great event that we can all enjoy even when we're locked down. So I'm Kat, I'm your host today. I'm the head of data science at RVU. RVU is a company that owns a group of brands that you probably will have heard of, including Uswitch, Confused.com, Money.co.uk, and also home to a very wonderful data science team. I'm joined today by Soumya from Deliveroo. I don't know if she wants to say hi now. Soumya is a senior data scientist in the marketing team at Deliveroo, and she's also an active mentor for the organisation Women Who Code. She's had a brilliant career. Before Deliveroo, she worked in both the analytics space at Amazon and social consulting, including multilaterals such as World Bank. So stacks of experience, and she's going to share a talk with us today about data and strategy. I would also like to say at this point, a massive thank you to Deliveroo for sponsoring both my lockdown stone and today's event. It's really great to have sponsors. It makes the whole thing happen, and we're really looking forward to the talk. So Soumya, over to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the lovely introduction. I'm just going to quickly share my screen, if that's okay. Unable to do that. Can only see somebody else's screen. And there it is. Okay. Can you see my screen, Kat?
I can, yes.
And are we good to go?
All yours. Looking forward to it.
Fantastic. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the SANDBOX session on the invisible skills and how we use them to do data science at Deliveroo. I want to start off with a brief introduction to Deliveroo and myself. Then I will spend the majority of the session talking about what I call the 7 invisible skills of highly effective data scientists. We can conclude the session with a case study where I will try to apply the 7 skills. When you think of your favorite food, think of Deliveroo, and you can have it delivered fast to your door. We operate in 12 markets. We are a 3-sided marketplace that consists of consumers, over 100,000 restaurants and riders. Our tech org has more than 300 rock stars, and more than a third of them are data scientists. Some of the projects that we work on the delivery side, we have a dispatch algorithm. We work on rider pricing. On the consumer side, we try to determine loyalty and subscriptions. You might have heard of Deliveroo Plus. We try to determine the restaurant rankings and how they appear on the app. On the restaurant sides, we work on segmentation, menu optimization, metrics for the business, exec reporting, profitability, marketing ROI. I'm going to touch upon that in the talk today. I'm Soumya Kavi. Kat's already given an introduction, so I won't spend too much time on it, but I have a diverse background in data science. I started my career with New Sigma, moved on to Amazon, did a bit of social consulting, had an NGO that used theater to teach life skills to young children. And most recently, I'm working at Deliveroo since 2019. Based on my background, I try to bring a bit of my art experience into the science of data. So yeah, let's begin. In my experience, these 7 skills are what ensure that all the hard work and sweat that is poured into data science is actually impactful and ensures that the business can drive decisions. When I looked at course structures for data science in major universities, I found data science tools and techniques such as Python, statistical models, and deep learning, but no mention of these skills. It's almost as if they missed a semester and these skills were invisible. So I pulled together this list based on my learnings in the past few years, various articles and blogs, feedback from my managers and stakeholders. I wanted to share these with you so that you can accelerate through that learning curve while I'm still trying to master some of these. You might be doing some of these or all of these intuitively, partially, but I'm bringing this as a concrete list top of mind. These are also the skills that we look at when we hire at Deliveroo, and yes, we are hiring. So let's begin with the first skill. The first skill is the why before the what. Most of the data science projects and products clearly articulate what they do and how they do it. So what is the model used? What is the output? What is the coding language used and how it works? The invisible question before the process begins is why. Let me give you an example of a data science project within marketing. So this is giving vouchers to customers who have stopped ordering from us recently. Let's call them churn customers to come back to the platform and order. And these campaigns, let's call them win back campaigns. So this is what the email looks like. We send an email which says, it's been a long time since we saw you. How about we knock off, the voucher amount from your order? The what of the project would be, what should be this voucher amount? What are the success metrics? How are we defining churn? These are great and important questions. But before we dive into the tactical details, I think it's important to establish the why before the what. Why do customers churn? Why are we giving vouchers to churn customers? Should we not instead maybe spend on acquiring new customers? Understanding the purpose of the project will help improve the mechanism and also make it more driven. For example, understanding why customers churn will help shape the targeting and the content. Understanding why them and maybe not new customers will help benchmark metrics in the project. I would recommend reading Simon Sinek's Why to understand the skill more. The next skill is the size of the prize. So now we've established that we want to target churn customers, what the project will look like, and we're ready. The best way to move forward is to translate what is the size of the prize? What does the project mean? What North Star metric will the project move? If we retain customers, how much will this improve our NPS if that's the North Star metric? What percentage of the total company do they represent? If we reactivate them, how much will they contribute to the business? What is the opportunity cost of them churning? Is the analysis outcome focused and who will it benefit? Now imagine the header of this project saying, this analysis reports the marketing performance of vouchers, forecasts the financial growth, and automates the reporting of churn customers. While all of this is impressive, it doesn't say how much does this move the needle. Compare that to this heading that says churn customers represent an opportunity. It's a fictional number just to illustrate the point. And reactivating them could improve the customer satisfaction or the customer lifetime value by a certain percentage. The next one is, who is the customer? When data scientists check their code and data, we call this a unit level test. We filter the code or the data to a typical user and check if the code works as intended for that user. Product managers use a similar concept called user personas. So user personas are semi-fictitious representations of target customers. The product team defines how different personas might use the product based on their lifestyle and recommend features to suit their needs. Can we take that concept and apply it to our analysis? Can we tell the user's journey and behavior through our experiment and analysis? Apart from reporting the overall numbers of the analysis, can we look at a typical customer? Instead of getting lost in averages, can we think of typical types of customers in our analysis? One of the core values of Deliveroo is customer obsession. This could mean our customers, restaurants, or riders. Every customer is different and so are their needs. So we believe that by trying to walk in their shoes, we can actually drive better decision-making for them. Take the case of Jen and Thomas here. They both have made 3 orders in the last quarter. However, if we zoom in on their behavior, we see that Jen is more likely to have churned when compared to Thomas. Taking the analysis to the customer level here actually helped us understand the early predictors for churn. The fourth skill is the bias for simplicity. Using the 80-20 rule to solve problems in the fastest manner possible with appropriate thoroughness. If we create a new algorithm, say, to estimate whether the next order placed is a large order, imagine 20 pizzas and lots of wine, can we check if a simple regression would get us 80% accuracy and trade off maybe a complex TensorFlow or neural network that gives us an additional 5 to 10% accuracy in favor of speedy decision making? The skill might be commonplace or common practice for those who make regular presentations to the business. But I think it might be relevant for those just starting out in data science. When I talk to a lot of candidates who are interviewing with us, they do a fantastic job of showcasing their technical skills. But when they're making case studies, they focus on the technique and they miss talking about how they would estimate the size of the prize. We have a specific interview round for sizing the opportunity when we interview. The next one is risks and mitigation. Let me actually give you an example of how we simplified. In the example of the win-back campaign, the data science team initially estimated a few months to calculate the payback period of the campaign. The payback period in marketing refers to the time required to recoup the investment made. But we asked ourselves, can we shorten the analysis window to speed up business decision making? Marketing is a fast-paced org. Can we accelerate the test and learn agenda by trading off accuracy within an acceptable threshold? An answer now that is 80% accurate and can lead to business decisions is more impactful than an answer that is 90% accurate in a few months. Another potential scope for simplification lies in communication. A lot of the data science jargon is lost in translation to the business. In short, can we ensure that the data science output is solution-oriented rather than technique-oriented? Can we have a bias for simplicity and choose tools that actually answer the initial why that we had articulated? The next skill is risks and mitigation. Risks should be preempted at different stages of a project. So before launch, it's good to think over if there is any strategic risk. Does this model, for example, interfere with any existing or planned models? How are different stakeholders, including different ends of the platform, impacted by this model? How will it be used or perceived? Are there any risks of any bias in selection of the sample? At Deliveroo, we use systems thinking, which is an approach to problem solving that views problems as part of a wider dynamic system and how they impact each other. It is a process of understanding how things influence one another as a part of a whole. During launch, can we anticipate a risk? One of the questions I like to explore is, was there a risk that you didn't anticipate before, and looking back, how would you anticipate them? Some of this risks can be mitigated by monitoring, but simply monitoring won't solve all problems. We need to be actively looking for risks. So are we overspending? Are we going over budget? How is the user experience? Are we looking at the model in isolation, or are we able to establish its relationship with the entire system? During analysis, in our example of the win-back campaign, it's a big marketing investment, and hence the recommendation should have not just the uplifts, but also clear efficiency metrics. It should have considered biases, such as the pull forward effect, and check if the orders are truly incremental. So pull forward effect is when we give a voucher and a customer who would have ordered tomorrow or in a week orders now, not because the order is actually incremental, but because now they have a voucher. This is probably my favorite one, which is the so what test. Let us say we've run the voucher campaign for the win-back campaign, and we report back that we saw an uplift of 20%. We talk about how we've measured it, what the costs were, how the data has had us build a more rigorous model for predicting churn. And the head of marketing says, great, thank you for the detailed analysis. So what? So what should we be doing? Should we continue to invest in this program? Is the order volume uplift sustainable, or is it only driven by vouchers? Will the reactivated customers stay active and showcase an increased order frequency after the voucher period ends? On the other hand, let's say the analysis showed that there was no uplift. Should the final takeaway be that it did not work and we scrap the analysis, or can we learn who not to target? Can we find pockets of opportunity within the analysis where the campaign actually worked? Does the analysis have clear actionable recommendations and next steps? Or does the analysis leave the stakeholders saying, so what? The next skill is the art of storytelling. How can we start with a hook that is engaging? How can we maybe present an interesting data nugget to capture attention and get everyone excited? Set the stage by stating the problem and build action. Bring the analysis to a climax by discussing the results, propose a solution, and end the presentation with a clear call to action that doesn't leave the room saying, so what? The sizzle is just as important as the sausage, and sometimes as data scientists, we just deal in sausages. Another form of storytelling is how you engage stakeholders during the entire project. So involve them early in decision-making, bring them on the journey along with you, make the trade-offs together, get stakeholders on the same side. When you bring them along the journey during the final presentation, you will see heads nodding rather than shocked and surprised faces. Here is a quick recap of the skills. In the last couple of weeks after I put together this presentation, I actually used this as a checklist for my own analysis. If all of them are quite intuitive, this list might provide an opportunity for self-reflection. I'm just going to pause here so you can take a look at the slides, look at the skills before I move on. Okay, great. This next slide is the case study as promised. So I was a part of a team that worked on giving new customers the best possible experience. So let me walk you through the presentation, and I'm going to build on the rules. So the first one being the why before the what. The earliest days of a new user's experience are key to meet their expectations. If you don't meet their expectations, they churn or they leave. This is an industry-wide data that I got from the blog linked below, which is 70% of the customers in the food and beverage industry, they churn. And actually acquiring a new customer can cost 5 times more than retaining an existing customer. So one of the questions that I asked in the earlier slides was, why would we spend on retaining and not acquiring? And this answers that question. So let me talk about the size of the price. So when we articulated this project, we spoke about what percentage of the business they represent. And if we acquire new customers by a percentage that is realistic, that is possible, that is projected, and if we increase the retention of the acquired customers, if we increase their order frequency, what would that lead to? How much would that increase our order volume? How much would that increase our profitability and our revenue? The third skill being who is the customer. What we did was we actually looked at the new customer's journey. We see how they discover Deliveroo, how they visit Deliveroo for the first time, how many menus are they looking at, are they able to find what they want quickly, or are they having to look at too many menus and not finding what they want? Is there a cognitive load of building the menu, or are there any frictions? How many of them are adding to the basket? how is the experience during that, how many of them are actually placing their first order, and ending up becoming loyal and happy customers. So at every stage, we asked for all our customers, what stops them from going to the next stage in the purchase journey. The fourth one was having a bias for simplicity. So when we're looking at this journey, we saw various opportunities for improvement, various places where the experience could be optimized, could be improved, where we could remove friction. But obviously there was a lot of scope to do and a lot of things. So how we simplified them was simply determining what can be quick wins, what are easy optimizations with low effort and high impact, and anything that was great experience but needed a lot of effort and needed a lot of strategy built in. We call that strategic vision. So we were able to take all those opportunity areas and synthesize them into these two parts so that it's very clear to work on and prioritize. Talking about the risks and mitigation strategies that we did during the project. The first one was big versus safe bets. One of the questions we were faced with was, should we take big bets that have a great impact but also have high risks? Or should we focus on a lot of small initiatives that could cumulatively give us big impact? The way we mitigated this risk was by doing both. We tested and validated our big bets on a small scale, and learned quickly from them, reiterated, and made sure we're launching the best version of the big bet. Another one was the risk of disrupting the existing journey. So if we alter the journey for new users and it is different from what they expected, will it harm, say, session conversion? If we increase our communication with our new customers, if we want to tell them what we offer, how many new restaurants we have, personalize the restaurant recommendations for them. And if we increase our marketing frequency, will the customers like it, or will the marketing opt-out rate increase? Essentially for every initiative, what metric could possibly go wrong? What could be potentially harm? And how can we avoid it or monitor it and have thresholds beyond which we have to roll it back? The third one was the risk of working in silos. So not only while there was a specialist team working on optimizing new user experience, there were other teams also focusing a bit of their time on new users. So how can we make sure that there are no potential clashes of the initiative? So pop-ups coming on top of each other and things like that. So instead of these potential clashes, the way we mitigated this risk is through collaboration and through collaborating activities that actually amplified the impact. The next one was the so what test. So to synthesize, we looked at the customer journey, found potential improvements, determined what the size of the prize was, and now we want to go ahead. We've determined the risks and mitigation strategies. What we did was we took all the initiatives. These are illustrated. We took all the initiatives and we put them on a 2x2, the 2x2 of impact and effort. So everything that was low effort and high impact, we call them quick wins. For example, the abandoned basket reminder. So if someone's abandoned food in their basket, we would send them a reminder saying, you forgot something, do you want to check out? Really low effort to implement, and we saw very good conversion, and the customers actually found it quite useful. Another example of high impact but high effort was the free delivery that we have for new customers. It took a bit of planning, but it was quite high effort, and hence we launched it in the long term. an example of probably low impact and high effort was launching a light version to reduce choice paralysis. A lot of the new customers that would log on to the app would see a lot of restaurants not be able to decide what they want and log off without making an order. So we were thinking of a light version where they have probably 4 or 5 restaurants only, so that they can choose quickly without having that paralysis. We couldn't justify the impact, and hence we decided not to go ahead with it. An example of low effort and low impact was just reminding customers to rate their order, which in fact increased their order frequency. It was low effort, but it was low impact as well. But because it was low effort and the customers found it useful, we went ahead and implemented it. There were a lot more, and what we did was in brackets for each of these, there were more than 20 of these. We had actually sized them. So you would see, say, free delivery is responsible for, say, 20% of the goal, and abandoned basket is responsible for 5% of the goal. And we could see and prioritize and make trade-offs quite easily depending on the roadmap. Yeah, those are how we applied all 7 skills, and we continue to do that. And that's it from me. I hope you found these useful.
Thank you so much, Soumya. Wasn't that great, everyone? We've had some great messages in the chat, but if everybody could please put some love, show Soumya some love, tell her how great the presentation was. And we've got some really great messages. We've got Jen, who's a first-time Data Science Festival. Welcome, Jen. We've got Danielle, who's thinking of a career in data after her master's degree. Please do. I'm sure Soumya would agree with me that if you want any advice, you've got our LinkedIn, so send us a note. And we got lots of thanks, great presentation. Oh, wow, look at that go, loving the love. Excellent, great presentation, thank you, great talk, invisible skills, oh, they're going so quickly. Thank you to Kat for hosting, and hello, Louise, how are you? Missing my Royal Mail team. Excellent, fantastic presentation. Soumya, amazing insights, product roadmap. Wow, this is excellent. That's lovely. I would take this opportunity to say that we have a Q&A section. We currently have some questions, but we could always do with some more, unless you want to listen to my questions for the next half an hour, which is I'm more than happy to do. But I think I'll kick off with a question first. Soumya, this is my question, and then I'll go to yours. How, and I love it, I find it very relevant. This is stuff that I do all day, every day. I've got a new favourite saying from you, which I've written down, which is the sizzle is as important as the sausage. I think we'll be using that one. But I would love to know, how did you find out about these invisible skills?
To be honest, there aren't 7. There are probably a lot more. And as in when I was discussing this with my colleagues, they kept adding things like prioritization that I would have loved to add to the list. I've seen repeated patterns in my experience. I've made the mistake of presenting the what, and repeatedly, sort of after 5 times, when your stakeholders or your manager says, where is the why? It sort of, you start to recognize the patterns in the questions and the feedback, and then they start sticking and they become a checklist for your 6th presentation. The other way that I've found these is, it's probably another rule for storytelling, which is trying to anticipate the questions your stakeholders would have. So when you're presenting them with something, try to anticipate what, if you were looking at this presentation, what would you ask? And once you build that anticipation, once you build that preparation, these skills the patterns in these skills start to emerge, and they become a checklist. Excellent,
that's great. I have one more question, but it sort of links into a question we've been asked. So I absolutely recognise all of these. I'm better at some of them than the others. I think they're all extremely important. Which one of the 7 is the one that you use the most often? And which one do you think is the most important? I
think the most important one, or the most frequent one, rather, is the so what one. A lot of the times, the so what or the next steps I have seen is further deep dive or further analysis. Um, I've realized that that is not a next step. If further deep dive is a next step, can we articulate what the deep dive will be into? Even articulating topics of what it will be is not enough. Can we have a clear hypothesis of what the next step would be? Can we look into data? Also, can we articulate the hypothesis before we dive in? Because going down data is a rabbit hole, and we can discover so many patterns, so many trends, but unless we go in with the hypothesis, we won't come back and merge with the storytelling we had.
Excellent, lovely. Okay, so I've answering a question live from Stephanie, which I think lots of people will be interested in the answer. So from an employment perspective, what are the top 3 skills to work successfully in data?
Maybe all 7. Are you talking about technical skills, or are you talking about the ones that I've mentioned?
I am guessing from the question that she means generally.
Okay. So let me actually talk about technical skills. So one of the circles I had mentioned was coding. When I say coding, it's not important that you're an expert at Python or R or SQL, but are you able to understand the basics of the code and quickly pick up another language? Are you able to understand the logic of how it works? Because the syntax is not as important as the application. You will get that through practice. In terms of math and statistics, it depends on what the focus of the team is. If it's experimentation, for example, can you pick up the basics of experimentation, and along with the technical skills, can you also pick up the application of it and make sure that it's applicable? And of course, these 7 invisible skills. I hope that answered your question.
That was excellent. That's very interesting. From my perspective, I'll add, because we're also hiring, but I have done a lot of interviews in the past. I think one of the key skills for data scientists, and I think particularly if you're starting in your career, which I love because it's something that is like easy and that you don't have to go out and learn it, but really I look for people who just thrive on solving problems. Like, data science is about science, right? It's about experimentation. It's about trying things that haven't been done before. So anything that you can do, or any examples you have that really highlight your enjoyment of that, because ultimately that's what makes a good data scientist, is loving the idea of using data to solve these problems. So excellent, great. I will move on to another question. This is a great question from Laura, who said, how long do these initiatives tend to take, and how many data scientists tend to be involved in them?
It really depends on the scale of the project. It could be 1 or 2 weeks. An average experiment probably lasts 5 to 6 weeks with a couple of weeks of analysis post that. We tend to have 1 or 2 data scientists per team, but if it's a big team and a lot of parallel initiatives, you might have 2 or 3 data scientists per team.
Excellent. Great, thank you. Moving on to Louise. Hi, Louise again. She's asked, what are some of the ways in which you encourage other people in your team to see how important these skills are?
To be as objective rather than being subjective as possible. The problem with these skills is, it's very difficult to articulate them and have that clear checklist. It's easier to review a code than do an insight review, or actually review if the presentation has this checklist. So I would say be as objective as possible, be clear in what you're expecting, and just highlight those gaps. And if your colleagues are able to see that gap clearly, then they will be, it'll be easier to get them on board.
Okay, that's great, thank you. We've got an interesting one here from Jeremy, who's asked, how do you apply the art of storytelling in presenting to stakeholders? And can you give us an example or a tip from your work at Deliveroo?
It's quite difficult. I must admit that's the most difficult skill to do it. But one of the best checklists of whether your presentation has a good flow or a good story is if your audience or the stakeholders asking you a question and the answer actually exists on the next slide. If you've done that, you're a fantastic storyteller. And this goes back to the skill of anticipating questions. So let me give you an example. If I say, we have 2 locations, and location 1 has 100 customers and location 2 has 10 customers. The most immediate question is, why? What's going on? Is one more mature than the other? And just having that flow in your presentation and having that flow in your analysis will give you a good checklist for storytelling.
Excellent, great. I want to share one of my own favourite examples of storytelling. So many years ago, I was working at British Airways, and we were building a recommender system that recommended where you want to go on holidays, which is like super fun model to build, right? Because you think about holidays all the time, and you talk about holidays, and you dream about holidays, which I am doing a lot at the moment. And one of the things that we did was we were trying to replace an incumbent like panel of basically regression models, and we built a content-based recommender. So we took the stakeholders who we knew would be in the meeting, we took their own historical flight data, and we compared the recommendations that were coming out of the incumbent model to the ones that were coming out of our recommender system. And it was just so powerful to see, like, we had people in the room who said, and this is actually true, said, I've just booked a flight to St. Lucia, or whatever it was that we recommended. And I think, like, if you can bring the reality and bring real life into data science solutions and what you're telling people, then you just have such a good opportunity to get people's buy-in. Like, I think there's one of the main skills of a data scientist is that we do things that are complex, but we have to make it seem simple. You know, we can't put a load of code or an algorithm or an equation in front of our customers, and neither should we with our stakeholders. So it's a lifelong battle. I'm sure I'm still learning, but it's great to see it as one of your 7 invisible skills.
Yeah, I think we see that as well. We're so tempted to put in a regression table and talk about the p-values and talk about everything, but translating that to your stakeholders and what it means actually can be a lot more powerful than the actual model.
Definitely. I'm going to follow on from Ismini with a very similar sort of question, which is, have you got a story about data science where the results of a model was translated immediately into a business decision that you could share?
So both the examples that I shared were immediately translated into business decisions. And I'm actually quite proud to say that at Deliveroo, it happens quite often. So the new user experience example that I gave, a lot of the experiments are actually live right now. And even the example of the win-back campaigns, we are constantly optimizing how to give the best experience possible. And even if the experiment is not launched, we do iterate on it and learn quickly. So if the overall experiment had a flat order volume uplift, we see, is there a location where it worked well? Is there a customer segment for which we can test again? And we're constantly, launching these experiments that were successful, rolling back, but constantly learning from them as well. So we're making sure that none of the data science products that are produced are actually wasted. They're useful in some way or the other.
That's a great answer. I'll share, because I've got a really good example for this one. So in my previous role, I was head of data science at Royal Mail, which, as we all know, is the Post. And in March 2020, something quite serious happened to the world and also to the postal system. So we had a really crazy month where we were trying to model the sick rate to work out if we'd still be able to keep the post going, even though we were getting up to like very high double-digit percentage of people being off sick. So we were modelling, and then we were having a call at 8 a.m. every morning with like very senior people in the business to say what should our decisions be today. And it was like exhausting, but it was fascinating. So I think like there's a lot in moving things immediately. There's a lot of value to be added there, which is great. Excellent. I've got a slightly changed tactic now. I've got one from Francis, who has asked, what tips can you give to career changers trying to get a foot in the door of data science? And how important would you say domain knowledge is for entry-level data scientists?
One of the top tips I give is learn SQL or SQL. It's very, very important to master that, because you might ultimately end up learning or using Python or R, but that's what we mainly use to extract data, manipulate data, and just build very strong basics in one coding language. And then it becomes very easy to pick the other. I would say also be flexible to learn others. I know some data scientists have very strong opinions against one sort of coding language and another, but when you're working in a community and working with about 100 data scientists, it's just be flexible to learn other languages while building strong foundations. And while I would say pick up a bit of basics of statistics, understand what is experimentation. A lot of the companies that I know use experimentation one way or the other. So even if you're not actually running them, your colleagues would be running them. So it's good to understand what is experimentation, what are the different ways we do it, how do we use that output. Be a specialist in one and be a generalist in the others. So either pick up business analysis, be fantastic at answering business questions and know what is machine learning and know what is experimentation, or be awesome at like econometric models, but just have a basic understanding of the other things. So understand that there are 3 or 4 ways data science is split. Understand what you want to go into, try and test all, build good sort of basics and certifications, and domain knowledge is definitely useful, not in the sense of actually having the information, but just knowing how you can use data science in that particular domain. So if you want to get into, say, Deliveroo, try to understand what kind of experiments we have done in the past. There are lots of talks online, a lot of articles on what kind of work we've done, understand, how you can use your expertise or your knowledge in our place, work on those case studies, and yeah, build application-based learning.
That's a great answer, I think, and has got so much useful stuff in it. My first coding language that I learned after my PhD was SAS, so don't do that, kids. Not widely used anymore. Yeah. I wanted to add as well, and I think, Francis, luckily for you, I'm about to answer your question by saying you're doing it at this precise moment in time, but for anyone who's trying to get into data science or who's early on in their career, I would say lean on the community a lot. Like, Data Science Festival is excellent. You'll get people like us, you'll get loads of people who are all really friendly, happy to give you advice, send us messages on LinkedIn. There's so much out there that's freely accessible, where you can learn so much that, it's a great career to get into because of the community, because of the amount of events and the amount of contact you can have with people who are working in the field. So I would say absolutely don't be frightened, go to meetups. If you've got no idea what it's about, you just think it sounds interesting, guaranteed you'll learn something and you'll meet some great people who can give you loads of help and make the connections that will really sort of help you be successful in your career and help you make the change successfully. Okay, we have, we've got a lot of questions in. I'm just making sure. We've got a good one here from Chelsea, who's asked, how do you manage your work-life balance with being comfortable knowing you will not be able to learn or keep up with every data science related tool out there?
Interesting you bring up work-life balance, because I have a 4-year-old who's quite demanding herself, and by 6 p.m. she's like, when will you get done with your office? I need a hug. It is quite interesting, especially in data science, because there's the fields moving quite quickly. There was a Forbes article a few years back saying it's now more valuable, data is now more valuable than oil, and new articles and new research methods coming up every day. Having said that, I would refer back to my previous answer, which is pick your specialty. If it's experimentation, if it's econometric models, make sure that you're up to speed on that particular field that you've selected, and everything else you're just aware. The other thing would be learn how to learn fast. So try to ask around anytime you want to do something new. Knowing what to do is a great start, and then you can always research how to do it. So important to know what kind of models exist And how to implement them and the details, you can always research or find out from your colleagues and the data science community once you know that you need to use it. But you need to know what model to apply in the first place.
That's great, thank you. I nearly forgot to unmute myself, which is a classic 2020-2021 move from me. There's an interesting one here from Clara. So Clara, apologies if I've misunderstood your question, but she's asked, as an analyst returner, are there any programs running or opportunities? So I'm assuming that means within Deliveroo.
Are you talking about a returners program?
I am assuming, apologies Clara if I'm not reading this correctly, that Clara is an analyst who wants to return to the field, return to data science or analysts.
We don't have a returners program specifically, but we don't sort of treat returners as a different category. We are always open to people who have the aptitude for data science. Like I was talking about my experience earlier, I'd left the world of data science to go into social consulting, to start an NGO, and came back after 3 years. So I was not viewed as a returner, but in fact, the team told me that they recruited me because I have a diverse experience and because I'm going to be bringing in something different from the rest of the team. So we will value every experience, even if it's within data, if it's outside data science, as long as it's building your problem solving skills, as long as it's building your aptitude to learn and view, the business in a different light.
That's great. That's a great answer. I also had similar questions from people who are, particularly as this is women in data science, women who've returned from maternity leave, and I think it's a great attitude to have. You know, like your skills will never go away. You may need a bit of a refresher, but you have the confidence to know that they're still there, and that you all you need to do is start using them again. It's a muscle, right? It's there. It just needs to be trained. Excellent. I've got an interesting one here from Liam, which I think is probably something that we both, I guess, spend a lot of our time thinking about. So he asked, what are the key influences that dictate effort or reward when plotting requests or developments on the chart? Is it as simple as time versus difficulty? And is the size of the reward usually informed by your stakeholders?
I would say yes and no. So the effort depends on what the feature is. If it's a lot of engineering effort that has to go into it, you have to collaborate with the engineering team to understand what it takes to build that feature. Have those long conversations with your entire team. It's a cross-functional effort. Talk to the designers in the team, understand how difficult or easy it is to design. Because what you see is not what actually happens. There might be a lot of effort that goes on in the back end. So it's very difficult to imagine what the others would do. If it's a data science model that you have to build, if you're the expert, you have a say on what the effort would be. If it's not your area of expertise, even if you're within data science, get that information from outside. Ask as many questions as possible to understand the effort. But ultimately, the person who's actually doing the work will be able to determine whether it's high or low effort. When it comes to the impact, as data scientists, we have a great tool on our hand, which is data. So if you're launching something, you'll be able to use past data or similar experiments or build a forecast model to try to estimate the impact. So you will have a say on what it could impact. Again, it has to be in collaboration with the business, collaboration with somebody who's actually implemented this in the past. So it's not somebody having a final say, but rather all of you coming to that conclusion together. And if you don't agree, both sides or all sides get to ask as many questions as possible to actually reach that conclusion. But it's a team effort rather than a single person plotting that 2 by 2.
Excellent, great, thank you. I've got an interesting one here from Helen, who said, first of all, thanks for a great presentation. Could you talk a little bit about the data and the work that you had to do beforehand before you were analysing it or building the model?
So what I keep telling everybody, or what I try to implement, is when you're starting an analysis or starting a project, counterintuitive as it may seem, do not touch data. First, form very strong problem statements. first form very strong questions that you would like to answer, strong form hypothesis, understand the landscape, understand from your stakeholders what it is that they're seeking from the analysis. Once you have those strong statements, dive into the factors or do something called an exploratory data analysis, where you're just understanding the relationship between all factors, understanding trends, what they mean. Have the numbers at the back of your head. You should be able to make those quick back of the envelope calculations to see if the numbers make sense. So once you've closed your laptop, you should still be able to answer top statistics. And that's when you'll be able to make those connections easily. The numbers should mean something to you. And once you've done that initial exploratory data analysis, you'll be able to feed those factors or variables into your model, have a very strong hypothesis as to why the ones that are significant have come out significant. Going back to the previous question, it's not about I've added this factor because the business was requesting it. Even if they are, try to understand why it is that it's in your model. So questioning it and having a strong hold on the whys along with the technique will really help your model, help the business.
That's great. Thank you. Really good advice. Really helpful for anyone who's going to come off this call and go and build a model immediately, which I imagine is quite a few people. Sabitha had a question which I would also like answering, which is, what tool did you use to build your presentation? Because it was great.
Thank you so much. I actually just used Google Slides, but my family is a family of designers and doodle artists, and I got a lot of help from them. So the doodle that you saw of me was my sister-in-law, and a lot of help from both my cousin and my sister-in-law. So thanks to them.
Oh, that's lovely. Excellent. You have to give us their email.
Yes. The doodle artist is Doodler Drama, and my cousin is Yelling Yellow.
Excellent. Great. Lovely. Chelsea has got an interesting question where she says, have you ever had imposter syndrome, and how did you overcome or manage this?
I would say all the time. I hate to admit it, but I have it all the time when I'm in a room full of data scientists who are saying things I don't understand. And I'm like, I'm a data scientist. I need to know what they're talking about, right? If I don't, what am I even doing here? But I would say data science is a very, very wide field. So it's possibly very difficult to be a master at everything. So try to know yourself, try to know the limit of your knowledge, and it's okay, whatever it is. So as long as you know out of 10 where you are on different skills, work towards reaching to the next number rather than getting intimidated. So if your, regression skills are 4 out of 10, good to know that, and understand what it takes to go to 5, go to 6. Know thyself, I guess.
That's a great data scientist answer to that question. So I can answer as well from my perspective. And I think imposter syndrome is a really interesting one because it's both more prevalent in women, but it's also so prevalent in data scientists, which I suffer from it for myself and find it amazing to think, like, quite often we've been interviewing over the last few weeks, and we interview people and we come off a call and say to each other, they were very good, they were better than us. It's like, it's just a natural. So I think my way that I deal with it is I just accept it. It's there. You just try your hardest to ignore it. Like it's not going to be helpful and it's not going to get you anywhere. So like, you're absolutely right. If you can find specific things, if you can quantify it, if you can make sense of it using data, then that's great. If you can't, ignore it, do it anyway. No one's going to tell you off. Like, we're data scientists, our job is to break things. So, go and have fun, break the model, pull down the cluster. We had a hackathon a couple of weeks ago and I managed to pull down our Databricks cluster, which everybody was hacking on midway through. So I think it's like, it still happens, it's still there. Just ignore it and go on and do whatever you want. Okay. We've got an interesting question coming from Andrew, who said, how much time do you spend learning new technical skills? And is this something that just happens naturally, or do you have to set aside time specifically?
Not as much as I would like. I'm going to be honest, but it depends on what is required at work. So if we need to apply something new at work, we need something new to learn or break down the problem, I'll go and research that problem specific sort of content. Other than that, we are constantly sharing interesting articles with each other. There are lots of great blogs, medium-towards-science.com, who are constantly publishing new things. LinkedIn is a great source. So I try to keep up, but not as much as I would like to.
Yeah, my answer would be very similar. Like, blogs are your friend. I love KD Nuggets as well. That's a great blog for finding out about papers that have just been published or new techniques. Great. So we have a few minutes left, and I'm just going through quite a lot of the apologies if I haven't asked your question. It's probably because quite a lot of them are very similar. So I have left one though, which I think is quite a doozy, and I'll leave it to last. So Ismini has asked, what's the biggest challenge in being a data scientist?
I think the biggest challenge is there's always a different way to do what you're doing, and it's always sort of debatable. Like the model you've built, you can use a different model, you can use a different approach. Every approach has some or the other bias, so you have to be able to trade that off. I think as a data scientist, as somebody who's building the product, that would be quite a lot of challenge. And it's a very active community, so all of us have very strong opinions on how to remove the bias, what's the right approach to take, and things like that. So yeah, just understanding that and being able to articulate that is quite important. And I just want to answer something that might be actually helpful for everybody, which is a lot of data scientists ask me, how should I get started? I would say if you're writing code, if you're building, learning a new tool, learning a new language, start a GitHub account, start posting all your code, start analyzing, start actually posting them somewhere and getting feedback. Start writing, blog posts on how you actually use them, and that might build a lot of practice and get feedback from industry.
That's a great answer. I think I'll share my perspective because it's very interesting. So data science is a very interesting job. And the reason I think it's interesting is we are expected to be precise and use precise tools, but in a job where we don't know what the solution is going to look like. We don't even know if the problem that we're going to solve is solvable. It's very like a PhD in that respect, in that like the definition is that you should be doing something where you're not totally sure what the answer is going to be and you're not sure what the approach is going to be. So I would say the biggest challenge, I think, is the uncertainty that you have within data science, within being a data scientist practitioner, and it's learning to sit comfortably with that uncertainty. So it's learning to sit in a room with a stakeholder who says, how accurate, I want a model that's 95% accurate, and understanding and knowing in yourself that that may be impossible. They may have just asked for something that's absolutely impossible. I've had some great impossible requests in my career from stakeholders. One was, so as I mentioned, at British Airways, I built a recommended to say where you want to go on holiday, which is something that is very recommendable because it's a choice that you make and there's signals that we can pick up. I was then asked if we could do the same thing, but for business trips. So I was like, we might want our next business trip to be in the Seychelles, but it's going to be in Reading. So there's not much choice you can have in that. So yeah, I think definitely like learning to live with that uncomfortability and uncertainty in what you're doing and thriving in that and understanding that that's what makes it exciting. That's what makes us passionate about it, is that quite often we'll come home from work and we'll have done something that we didn't expect to do when we went to work in the morning, and we've learned something that we never thought we'd learn. So that was great. Excellent. That brings us to time. So all there is left to say is, Soumya, thank you so much. Such a wonderful presentation. I will be going and telling all of my team about the 7 invisible skills and trying my hardest to practice them myself and get better at the ones that I'm not as good at. Thank you to everybody on the line. Thank you for your time. Thank you to the organisers, Jess, Amy, David. Thank you. It's been great. And see you all. I'll be on the other side next week, but see you all next week.
Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.